From the description and everything, I gathered that you guys are a pretty fresh band as an outfit together. Is that right?
Yeah, I'd say that's accurate. I mean, like individually, we've probably been playing in different bands and been musicians for probably 6, 7 years respectively. But this project itself has only been around for, I guess, a year seriously, and maybe about a year and a half kind
Yeah.
of casually. So yeah, it's a pretty fresh collective, I guess.
Where does the name of the band come from?
It is with a curly one.
It's very
came.
interesting. So, and there is always a story behind it. Even if there is no story, there is a story about it not having a story. So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this one took months. Like, I think we spent way too long on things. But this one we had, so our first single, Dreamy, that came out like sort of this time last year. And I think that was done probably for like 2 months or so. And we'd been sitting on all these different names for about 2 or 3 months because we're like, oh, we've actually got a song. Now we have to like commit to a band name.
Yeah.
So we had heaps. We had a whole list every day. We'd be like, what do you think about this one? We'd go, yeah, no, I don't know about it. And then, but the worst part is that once you commit to something, it's completely arbitrary. Like there's some horrendous band names out there, but you don't think about it. I guess it just becomes a thing. But the actual title itself and the name came from, I was standing at the station and I just saw a Twin Peaks poster, and then I liked the alliteration idea.
Okay.
And then I just mixed some words with it, and I liked how it looked kind of visually as well, because it's a nice four letter, and there's a bit of alliteration to it as well. And then I think I just pitched it to the fellas, and I can be quite convincing sometimes. So
I can tell. After this talk, I can tell who the boss is in the band. Yeah.
Someone's got to steer the ship.
It was definitely just one that, you know, we, as I've said, we had sort of a short list for a little while and it would go back and forth. But Peak Park was the one that we didn't all hate the next day kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, yeah, I think the alliteration thing is a big part, as you said, Hoff, like the Peak Park thing, and even beyond alliteration, you know, it's sort of almost a similar word in both cases. So it kind of looks cool next to each other. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's nice and arbitrary as well. Like it doesn't really mean anything. Like it could be a place, it could be nothing for that matter. So yeah, there was method behind the madness, but it was also pretty random. So
you started as a band kind of like it was supposed to be just a one-off gig, correct? For a friend. So is this too personal to talk about, or can you tell me a bit more about that experience and how it developed into the band later on?
No, not at all. So I guess, yeah. Well, I guess how it all started was that I was playing, as I said, in a band from high school, and that sort of ran its course, and I was writing all these songs. I'm going to try and cut this down because it can be quite a dense story. But long story short, I had all these songs, and a friend I'd made through work, I sent him some demos, and he really loved it and said, you got to start playing these songs live. And I said, yeah, we'll see. And then he was playing a show and asked if I wanted to support, and it was like 2 months out. And I think I woke up one morning just particularly like frustrated at uni and work and all that sort of stuff, and said, yeah, bugger it, like today's the day. So I knew Cal from that previous band because he was a friend of a friend, and then Mitch, who's the singer, I used to work with him as well. So I more or less tried to recruit a bit of a super group because I knew they were like great musicians, and yeah, and that's pretty much how it started. So it was a support slot, and that just snowballed from there. I'd say that's kind of how I took the Cal. I don't know if it was maybe different coming from your end.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, I guess when you were sending that music around to your friend who got you that support slot, you'd sort of done the same for me, and I was interested in it, and I was pretty keen on it, really. So it was a real it was a real for me to ask. Yeah, exactly. It was a real pleasure to be asked to participate. So it was fun getting to know those tunes and getting a set ready to perform. You know, to be thrown in at the deep end, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. And where was that gig? Was that any particular, like a very famous venue or anything like low key or?
It was called, I think it used to be called Public Bar, but now it's called Last Chance Rock and Roll Bar. So it's just near Victoria Markets. It's a pretty kind of stock standard Melbourne pub sort of bar. So yeah, it was cool. So it was a real challenge though, that whole show and that whole process, but I'm glad we stuck it out.
Yeah, it looks like you guys not only pulled it off, but actually kept on going. So congratulations, because sometimes people get together for one gig and it's a disaster, and then they just leave it. So
Yeah, well, it
Yeah.
was on the disaster front because the way we were playing at the time is that, and we still do now, we don't actually have a drummer. So we were
oh,
playing to a backing track. Yeah. So we were playing to a
Yeah.
backing track, and there was some synth parts, and we learned a very good lesson that night that, like, when you're playing live with a backing track, you want to have as much in your foldback coming back to you, because we got, I think, into the second song and we were all at like different bars, and it was all over the place. But you'd ask people after the show and they're like, no, I couldn't even tell,
yeah. So on the note of you not having a drummer, because that was my question, I was like, who does the drumming, since you all do guitars and singing and bass and stuff? But you can definitely hear, different instruments, not only the drums. So do you guys do everything yourself? So you just use your own resources, or do you employ like people from the outside for the gigs?
All of it's just us. Like the drumming side of it is just like I kind of write the drum parts. I can't play drums particularly well because I just haven't sunk the time into it. But it's all written in kind of GarageBand and Logic, and it's all MIDI. And the ultimate aim is to try and make it sound as real as possible. But yeah, it's all written in the box, and then we just play along to it, I guess. Which sounds cheap, but that in itself is a challenge. And even for Cal, for instance, like, he's the bones of the rhythm section, so it's a lot to take on.
Yeah,
it is, and it's fun to interact with that, and because we're sort of like writing that stuff on the fly on the computer, it's easy to not have to negotiate with a real drummer, that we can just sort of start to flesh out a song a bit further. And I guess you mentioned as well, there are other instruments like the synths, for example, and that's sort of the same deal. Hoft usually is the one programming these things in, and it's a big part of the songwriting process, I guess.
Yeah, it's a freedom to be able to do, like, even in a practicing sense as well, without a drummer, where you don't have to play as loud, so Mitch doesn't have to like pump and sing as hard as well, and we can practice later into the night. Like, we can just stop a song at 3 minutes 20 and just loop a section like it. And not to say that drummers are the reason why you can't do that, but it's another element to take out of it while we're fleshing out the songs. And that's just part of our writing process as well, because we have that complete freedom to just loop 12 bars of music for 4 hours and see what happens.
So just to understand it correctly, so you guys not only record the music yourself, but you do like all the production, mixing and everything, like you release it as yourselves, like you don't have any big record label behind, or like there is no production, like, state of the art and so on. So it's basically all DIY, homemade kind of music, if I can say.
Yes.
So. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So go for it. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, which is, I think, interesting for us, because DIY tends to suit maybe a bit more lo-fi music sometimes, and it lends itself a bit more towards that. So we're trying to replicate like high fidelity music based on a year of amateur mixing and like recording. And, we just give it a crack and hopefully just get better and better. And
you can tell that you experiment still with a lot of stuff, like the different instruments, and we're kind of trying to find that maybe genre, because I have the impression, at least, that you are still navigating your ways in the music kind of world, and trying to find your kind of sound. Is that right?
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty spot on. How do you feel about that, Cal?
Yeah, I guess so. It's sort of, because we're still pretty early on in the journey, the direction, it has like lots of different ways it could go. So we're definitely starting to move away from that sort of organic sound of three guys in a room, and starting to add in those bigger layers that turn it into sometimes dance music, or something more sort of shoegazy or whatever else. I don't know, but and we'd like appreciate the comments about the mix. Obviously I can't take any credit for it, because it's Hoft that's behind the computer doing it. But I think it's you might say that you're sort of a lay person, but I guess that I'm sure you run into a lot of music, and even if you might not know the real details behind a mix or the production, I think you'd probably know if you thought it was bad. So it's a nice compliment, I guess.
Yeah, I'll take it.
And also it's not only me, because I look through the Triple J Unearthed, for example, comments, and you got some good ones there as well. So those people are professionals, and and Triple J obviously is the radio station in Australia that young person at least listens to. So that's your target audience. So did you get any gigs cancelled, or was that the period where you just wanted to just wait it out and see?
We'd started putting out the feelers, I think, didn't we, Cal? It was pretty much as it kicked off, we'd started emailing different venues.
Yeah, pretty much. We were making the steps towards getting that sort of single release going. The one thing that was sort of I don't want to say minor thing, but we were supposed to appear on we're doing a television show.
Yeah, we're doing a TV
spot there.
Oh,
yeah, and that got cancelled. But it probably, not to downplay it, that's probably not as big of a hit to us as it was, as far as like giving this single a proper release. That we still will do. That's just the state of the whole thing, I guess. But as far as that, yes, the timing sort of meant that we weren't impacted as far as like committed to gigs that were all in a row or anything like that.
Yeah. And I think as well, we're pretty far from the point where full-time gigging and touring isn't really on the agenda. I mean, hopefully down the line when things change, and depending how the releases go and all these other variables. But yeah, compared to plenty of other local musicians and that, I can only imagine how crippling it would be for them. Like, this is months and months worth of touring just down the sink. Like,
so just to confirm, you guys are obviously musicians more as a hobby now than it is your actual profession, correct? So you all have like other jobs and they maintain your lifestyle, and then you're heading towards like maybe having a music career as your main source of income. Is that right?
Hopefully. I think we're a bit of a stretch, but hopefully, this could be the one. But realistically, I feel like it's quite a big transition from going to be able to like even releasing an EP or an album and then being able to full-time tour it and all that sort of stuff. So, but no, we're working class slicks with a side hobby of music. So
what's coming next? Let me put it this way: is there an EP in the works, or like if you've got any more songs, in anything in the pipeline, or you're gonna see how it goes?
Well, I mean, there's an abundance of songs sitting there. It sort of depends. I think we kind of roughly know which one is getting attention next. But as far as whether, I don't know, I'm not being tight-lipped about it, but I guess there's still a bit to decide about, whether it be in sort of single or EP format. It sort of depends on how this sort of thing goes currently. But you can elaborate.
I think we've wanted to do an EP for forever, because I think our songs would lend itself to be listened to as more of a 10-15 minute stretch, and I think we have that ability to do that. What it kind of decides that though is whether we think it's actually worth the time and effort to put out a whole EP and only have 10 people listen to it, or it's better to release 3 of those songs as singles and really push them and try and get some people behind it. So part of that decision for the future is just what's going to be most beneficial for the songs itself, and whether they just fall on deaf ears or whether we try and push them a bit harder as singles. But yeah, I agree with Cal. We've got, I think, 2 songs at least that we're just as equally excited about to work on. And then a ton of other demos that are just sitting there waiting to be made into songs as well. So we'll see. We'll see, one single at a time.
Oh yeah, I think it's a good approach actually, and I think it's a very mature one as well, because you actually wait for the response from your listeners as opposed to pushing towards releasing an album for the heck of it, and then it might be a complete failure. And you do everything yourselves, obviously. You don't have a manager, so you like the producers, the musicians, the marketing people, in everything else, right? So you don't have any external resources to do that.
We joke that we have like a PR and a graphics division, but it's just us. We do all our visuals, like all our videos. We have a friend, Todd, who helps sort of take our photos, because it's kind of hard to man a tripod, just the 3 of us. So he helps a lot with the photo side of it. But yeah, the editing, the artwork. Well, this particular single, actually, we reached out to a friend and he painted the artwork, and then we finished it off with a bit of graphic design. But all the marketing, PR, all that sort of stuff, we give everything a crack, which I think is cool for us, because we're falling into that stage now where we're starting to try and branch out and network as well. Like it feels like a real sort of professional thing to do, but as you've touched on before, it is a business in a sense. Like being a brand and a musician isn't just like, it's not just about your songs, it's about the people you know and who you connect with, and trying to put yourself out there in that regard. So like, I'm personally really keen to get excited and get involved in some of that stuff.